Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Friday, and all of our guests today brought to you by the Bayside Oceanfront Resort. Those guests include Thomas Drance standing by. Escape to the Bayside, the ideal mid-island destination for a relaxing weekend getaway. Enjoy comfortable accommodations, ocean views, and exceptional service. Book your stay today at BaysideResortParksville.com. As we bring in Thomas Drance from The Athletic. Before we do that, I want to read this. Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox. Sav in Van City. Can you imagine if Team USA had Quinn at the Four Nations tournament? They would be unstoppable. We didn't bring that up in the first segment. Yeah. As impressive as they were, and I realized they were, playing the minnow of the four teams at the Four Nations. We forgot to mention they were missing a certain player that maybe might have been their best player at this tournament. Thomas Drance joins us now from The Athletic. Thomas, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
Gentlemen, good morning. How are you?
Very well. What stuck out after a couple of games at the Four Nations for you, Thomas?
Well, the pace, especially of the Canada-Sweden game, was through the roof. I mean, electric hockey. I was giddy after watching it. Might have needed a smoke, like that sort of feeling. I was so thrilled by what I'd witnessed. And then, I thought the USA-Sweden game was a little bit more of a slog, frankly. I don't think it had the same electric pace, but it was still an entertaining watch. And I mean, the quality of these teams is just so wild, right? I mean, we're talking 90-point players playing fourth line minutes. Mm-hmm. And what I really like about that generally from a hockey nerd perspective, from a hockey viewer perspective, is, you can still feel the difference when Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon hop over the boards. And in some ways you feel it more sharply than when Travis Konechny does, right? I mean, Travis Konechny, you see him on a Tuesday night in February in Vancouver, and he's clearly the Flyers' best forward. And you're just like, man, this is an unbelievable player. He's leading his team in scoring by 20 points, right? But the fact that there's still that massive gap, right? That massive gap. Now, it's not a surprise. It's not like we didn't know it. And I'm absolutely not casting aspersions at Travis Konechny, but raising the level of talent on the ice in some ways helps me appreciate the greatness of the very best in the world at sort of a different level. And I felt like you saw that last night with Matthew Tkachuk and company. Honestly, I even thought you saw it a little bit with Finland's PP1 to give Suomi some credit here. But certainly you felt it with McDavid, even though that line, I think, is still building chemistry. You absolutely felt it with Crosby, McKinnon, and Stone on the ice. And I just think that adds texture, adds to our understanding of why these best in the world guys are, as good as they are, and sort of a feel for just the size of the gap between them and even the other NHL superstars. And I think that's good. I think that's important for the league to sort of create the most challenging possible environment for the best hockey players in the world. And it looks like they've successfully done that through two games at this tournament.
Thomas, there are Canucks there. It's going to be good for Lankinen to get a start. That's going to be really good for him. Probably before the tournament, he didn't know if he would get one, but they got shelled last night pretty good. What about...
Maybe it's also going to be good for Todd Diamond potentially here, Rick.
Well, if he plays well. But Thomas,
yeah, he's going to be doing cartwheels if he plays well. Lankinen, of course, is going to play well. He's going to be steady, right? Like, we kind of know what he is. He's a good player.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be a guy on the other side against Lankinen tomorrow, Pettersson. What did you think of his game? And a lot of people were hoping this tournament would help him get back to his old self.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about it for weeks here, but I just don't see the burst in his first few strides, Rick. So I think this is going to take a little bit more time before we see vintage Pettersson. I will say, in a game played at that pace, I still thought Pettersson could hang. I didn't think he was a liability on the ice by any means. And in fact, he had that one play sort of seaguling the puck away from McDavid off sort of an entry attempt. He had some nice defensive moments. He absolutely was, not exposed or sort of off of the pace of that game. And given what the pace of that game was, I think that is meaningful. There's levels to this effectively. Now, with the way that his game is trending, he's not playing at an elite game breaker rate. And obviously he's paid to be that guy. You saw the missed one-timer in overtime. You saw the 2-on-1 that he couldn't really manufacture a high-quality chance out of. So he wasn't going to be a reason why Sweden won the game, but he also was at a level where he wasn't going to be the reason Sweden lost. And given the level of that competition, I do think that's notable. I think it tells you a lot, frankly, about where Pettersson's game is at, right? He's still capable of soaking up, significant minutes and sort of holding his own against the top competition in the NHL or in international play. But he's not at the level that he's been for, most of his 450 game career, where he can be the reason, the player that makes the difference for his team on a nightly basis. And for me anyway, I just think that's a physical limitation. I just think that he's not moving the way that he has in the past. I don't know if it's injury combined with, missing some training in the offseason combined with a lack of confidence. Like, I'm not going to diagnose exactly what's going on. It's probably a correlation of forces. But, that's been my observation for weeks here, and I thought we saw it again. I thought what we saw was pretty consistent with what we've seen from Pettersson through most of the season.
Trade deadline, 3 weeks today, Thomas, and the Canucks got some hard decisions to make because they got some UFAs, pretty big ones, and Brock Boeser, Lankin, and Pia Suter, among others. What's going on there? I mean, when do you expect a decision on Boeser? Like, I don't think one's been made yet, but we're getting down to the crunch here.
Yeah, I mean, I think both sides have a sense of sort of what it would take, right, Rick? It's just that it's going to take a lot. And this Canucks team is transitioning in the wake of the JT Miller trade. And, figuring out that those complexities are massive. For me anyway, I think this trade deadline from a Vancouver perspective is complicated because of the complexity of their situation. This is not a team that should be selling. They're a team that's going to make the playoffs. But they're also not a team that should be buying. They're a team that's going to make the playoffs more than likely in a wild card spot. Or as the third, team in the Pacific Division. We're looking at a Winnipeg or a Vegas or an Edmonton, potential first round opponent, right? That this is not something that the club can, or given their positioning and given how they've played and given the talent level on this roster post JT Miller, I don't think this is a team that you can, push your chips into the center of the table for either. So for me, sort of the shape of this deadline, I do think it kind of begins with the Boeser domino, right? If you're extending Boeser, then you're probably not buying much at all. If you're selling Boeser, we've seen this management group turn around and take the assets gained in trades involving established players to buy, to replace, to replenish. And I think that's sensible. I think a hybrid approach, Harmon Dial and I over at The Athletic today have a new article up. And one sort of situation we spotlighted was, the Washington Capitals a couple of years ago traded Dmitry Orlov as a rental, but then turned around and used the pick to buy Rasmus Sandin, right? A younger player who's now playing top 4 minutes for them, and they're obviously killing it. Like that sort of maneuver, I think, would make a ton of sense if a compromise extension can't be reached with Brock Boeser. Pugh Suter, Derek Forbert, Noah Juleson, sort of less high profile, pending unrestricted free agents. And in my mind, this club should be pretty scrupulous about avoiding own rentals, especially given that, at some point you're going to be able to sign Tom Verlander. Elias Pettersson, the defender, has played, showed some promise, right? Carving out some minutes for those guys and netting some future picks, gaining some information. I don't think that's going to cost you a playoff spot by any means. And I think it'll be helpful for this management group to get that sort of data going into next season. And likewise, even a player like Pugh Suter, losing Pugh Suter would hurt this team. They're thin down the middle. He's a really good player. Ideally you'd be able to bring in another center and move him to wing, but I don't know that this team's positioned to take on the risk of losing, valuable contributors without compensation and unrestricted free agency this summer. I think they have to manage that risk pretty scrupulously, given where they're at in their team building cycle, a very new phase of their team building cycle as a result of the trade 2 weeks ago. So, even there, I think if it comes down to it and you're playing Bluger on the third line and you're playing Neil Zaman and Atu Ratu on the fourth line, but you've gained a second round pick that you can use to, upgrade your forward depth this summer, either by making the pick or trading it, more likely given this management group's MO. I think that's something that the club has to be willing to look at and make the hard decision on. Lankinen for me is the one who has to be a priority. In my mind, to extend, especially given some of the uncertainty around Thatcher Demko and given the level of play that he's managed. I don't think it's unfair to say that he's carried the team through stretches of the season, and I think internally they feel the same way.
Lankinen in goal for Finland tomorrow against Sweden. Yeah. Thomas, thanks for this, sir. Have a great weekend, and happy Valentine's Day. Yeah. Sorry we didn't get you anything.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I love you guys nonetheless. Happy Valentine's Day to you.
Oh, the feelings are the same. Same.
Right back at you.
And to all of your viewers too. You're all beautiful. Enjoy your Valentine's Day.
Oh,
wow.
We'll have you back next week just because of that. Thanks, Thomas.
Cheers, guys.